So recently I've been spending quite a bit of time building up my rolling stock of LNER coaches and locomotives and a few wagons, but mainly focusing on the locomotives and coaches. My layout is normally Eastern Region British Rail, sort of 1950s, 60s. But I really like the liveries of the LNER, the different, the apple green, the plain black, and the various other liveries they did, and the colour of their coaches as well really appeals to me. So I thought I would start collecting a few LNER locomotives and so on. And virtually every single one of them has been bought second hand. And this is a particular example I picked up recently off eBay. It was £60. It's an Oxford Rail LNER N7. And it's in superb condition. All I had to do was to fit a new back coupling to it. It runs beautifully, and it's quite hefty. It's quite weighty for a small tank engine, really. And you'll see it has no problem pulling the quite long rake of coaches I've got behind it. Here we go. And you might want to try and work out what the rake of coaches is. If you've watched many of my previous videos, you know I'm a bit of a fan of the Ian Kirk range of coaches, no longer available new, although a company, Phoenix Precision, are gradually starting to reproduce them. So if you like having a lovely variety of LNER coaches on your layout, Phoenix Precision is a name to Google. They're an English-British based company, I believe. And what my N7 is pulling is two LNER Quad Art sets. That is to say, they're articulated sets of coaches designed, I think, by Nigel Gresley for the suburban services. So there's basically two sets of four coaches, and each set of four runs on 5 bogies. Now I thought I would zoom in on the coaches just so you could see what I'm talking about. So the shorter of there's 2 shorter and 2 slightly longer coaches, and here's one of the brake coaches, and you can see it's got 5 compartments, and they're very tightly cramped together. There wouldn't have been much leg space in third-class commuter compartments on the LNER. And next to it you can just see, hopefully, if I bring that into the middle, one of the articulated bogies. Now at the moment I haven't quite finished these. They've got a little white piece of plastic card. That is to make sure that it's just to make them ride at the right height and more smoothly going around corners. I actually bought this set as an unfinished project. Someone else had started them. They'd made them to a very good standard, nicely painted. They'd put some passengers inside. And really, they'd been built to a very high standard, but they didn't run at all well. And they wouldn't go around my train set curves, and there was a horrible scraping sound even when they went in a straight line. And I realised that's partly the design of Ian Kirk kits. Sometimes they don't allow enough leeway, enough free space between, for example, the bogie wheels and the underside of the coach. Perhaps they were designed for such fine flanged wheels that wasn't an issue for the designers, but if you've got slightly coarser scale wheels like I use, then they sometimes used to scrape on the underside of the coach. So I've slightly raised the bogies. That also allowed the bogies to rotate more freely, and I had to also widen the gap between the 2 separate articulated coaches. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So here is an Ian Kirk bogie as built for an articulated coach. You'll see there are 2 little holes there in the middle. Normally you'd drill a hole right through the middle, and that would screw onto a pivoting bolster on the underframe. But in this case, sorry, my camera's sagging of its own accord, even though I've tightened it up, tightened the tripod off. Anyway, when you want an articulated coach, you drill 2 holes. They're drilled on the original bogies, so you know where to put them. But those will not, and then a little pin from the end of the coach goes into each one of those. But that puts the coaches too close together. So I had to fashion something where they were a bit further apart. Now, if you compare what I've done with the original, you see I've lengthened the holes. The problem would be then when the pin from the coach went into that hole, it would actually sort of jam in the slightly uneven top of the bogie. That's difficult to make out there, especially as the bogie is in black. But I can assure you it would cause a problem. So you just needed a little piece of plastic card to go on top. And my plastic card also gives a nice circular hole. I need to paint that, obviously, make it a nice black colour to suit with the bogies, but it does the job of keeping the coaches just the right distance apart so it can go around second radius curves without actually derailing. And if I just show you now, by lifting up, you can see hopefully the little pin on the coach that goes into the hole there and keeps the whole thing correctly spaced so that it can go around nice tight curves. He says, derailing the main bogie at the same time. Okay, so let me just show you that running one more time. And I hope you'll agree they're a pretty good looking rake of coaches. Now, Ellis Clark trains are producing a ready-to-run rake of the Quad Art set. I think, if I recall correctly, they're going to set you back about £300 for a single set. So that's basically 4 coaches, £300. Well, I won't tell you how much I paid exactly, because I can't remember the exact price, but I've worked out that my whole rake of 8 coaches, that's 2 Quad Art sets, worked out about half the price of the Ellis Clark set. So, yeah, the Ellis Clark set looks superb, but I would say it'll be a lot more realistic than mine. You know, everything about it will be superb, but I would say also that you'll probably find, if you really want realism, you'll want to run it in 2 sets coupled up. So if they're going to be £300 a set, you're going to have to buy yourself 2 sets, £600, because typically the LNER did use them as 2 sets permanently coupled. Not all the time. They may well have been distributed away from the main lines when I think it was when BR introduced their Mark I suburban coaches. Then King's Cross tended to do away with these Quad Art sets. I may not be spot on with that, but anyway, they were used extensively for the sort of high concentration of commuters they needed, typically though in 2 complete articulated sets. 8 coaches, well, Ellis Clark's going to cost you £600. So if you want ultimate realism, it's going to cost you money. I'm just happy with my Ian Kirk coaches, as I always am. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that brief little view of my latest purchase. I hope you have a good Christmas, whatever time of year you're watching this. Cheerio for now.